Hey! So, a little while ago, I found myself walking alongside a family member who's a professional musician, and they asked me if there are some tracks from video games I'd like to share with them. Now, my taste in music is pretty similar to theirs, and by this point we both have discussed a fair amount of musical compositions. Some of them, OSTs from the likes of Undertale, Minecraft, Omori, and Plants vs. Zombies. This was some time after Deltarune Chapter 2 had come out, so I showed them a couple of my favorite tracks and explained that this game's music is known for its leitmotifs. A leitmotif is a melody that is associated with a character or an idea. If you make your audience connect the track to a character, you can then change that track to better reflect what that character is going through. This can be done by subtly changing the melody, rhythm, adding or removing instruments or audio effects, whatever you want, as long as the original melody is still recognizable. One in-game instance that highlights this well is Attack of the Killer Queen. Alongside Queen's various themes, we can hear Birdley's leitmotif, but played using Queen's harpsichord and square wave, showing how she's physically controlling him and his attacks with a plug. After telling them all this, I considered showing them Spamton Neo's theme, Big Shot, and started thinking about how I could explain its leitmotifs to them, which is when I realized I couldn't. I would have to spend all day going on about Deltarune and Undertale's lore to definitively gather all the information that an experienced listener can understand in just 2.5 minutes. This video is the explanation, basically. I'd like to go through the track and point out any and all leitmotifs borrowed from other places, what they might mean, and why this ultimately makes Big Shot a bit of a culmination of all the lore Toby has set up. Firstly, what are Spamton's own leitmotifs? The first one we encounter is found in the track, fittingly titled Spamton. Let's call it leitmotif A. When played in isolation and on a piano, this melody, or most of it, sounds like it's confidently trying to involve you in a pyramid scheme, and is moderately succeeding. This, however, is not backed up by the track at large. The melody is drowned in a pool of bit crush and echo, or, as the pros like to call it, fruity delay 3, taking that confidence and turning it into an uncomfortable red flag in a tiny suit. Everything becomes even less trustworthy when we consider the other two non-drum instruments from this part. The strings that have similar audio effects applied to them and are played with 2 notes at a time, with these accidentals making sure you really get how slimy this alleyway situation is. And the bass, showing itself only in the form of these quick stabs or these slidey bits, and played so low that it gets difficult to determine the pitch, and also MuseScore gets really mad at me. All of these elements create an image of a creature trying really hard to seem reliable and sincere after meeting Chris in hopes of getting their heart-shaped object, but ultimately failing for reasons that are not yet clear. Though we get a glimpse into that at the end of the melody, these 16 repeating notes. In the language of sound, such rapid, obviously non-humanly playable repetition almost exclusively correlates to a computer program getting stuck on an instruction, which Toby actually already used in Undertale. After hearing that glitchy stuckness, the listener can already guess that this character is not only some sort of a computer program, but also, at least partially, out of his mind. Also, there's a phone ringing sound at the end of each phrase. Wonder if that's gonna come back later. By the way, while describing all of that, I was assuming you just sat at the first line of the dialogue and listened to the music without doing anything. Of course, there are other sources you can get all of this from, but isn't it great how accurately this man is described in such a short amount of time, using only sound? Anyway, on to the next leitmotif. Let's call it B. It can be heard during the actual Spamton fight. I don't know about you, but I closely associate these sounds, known as impact hits or orchestra hits, with the level Metallic Madness from Sonic CD and Sonic Mania. More specifically, the piston from that level is, to me, the audio manifestation of an impact hit. It just sounds like the sound that piston would make when it snaps back and forth, ready to crush you without hesitation. Which is why I think it sounds kind of out of place here. There's a difference between soulless mechanical limb that is 1,000 times stronger than you, and lost corrupted soul trying really hard to keep itself together. Well, this particular sound screams to me the first thing, not the second. Maybe the hundreds of times I beat Sonic Mania conditioned my brain to think in such a way, and it's just me. It does work as a sort of foreshadowing of what's to come though. Also, the rhythm. It feels weird because it's syncopated. So, most music is written in 4/4, right? And very often, the composer wants the listener to pay attention to the 4 main beats. Ta, 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 ta. That's an oversimplification, but bear with me. Let's look at Dance of the Nights by Prokofiev. Or, well, listen to it. Notice how these 4 beats in each bar are the most deliberate. A lot of the piece's pressure is being put on them, while every other note kind of passes by. Let's call them strong beats and weak beats, respectively. Now let's visualize this rhythmical pattern. Let there be 16 squares, where each one represents an equal amount of time. Let's now draw where each strong beat should be. Logically, with such a regular rhythm, the notes we draw are spaced out equally. Each one gets 4 squares to live in. Cool, good for them. On the other hand, we have the rhythm found in Spamton's B leitmotif. Visualizing it in the same way, we get this. Comparing the two side by side. You see how the Spamton one almost goes out of its way to not put its notes on one of the 4 primary beats. Well, that, abridgedly, is syncopation, placing the accent on what otherwise would be a weak beat. Of course, it's not like a regular pulse is the default, and everyone else is a disobedient rascal. They both have their place in time. For completeness' sake, this particular rhythm is an Afro-Cuban one named Bossa Nova Clave, the 3/2 kind specifically. Okay, those are the 2 main leitmotifs Spamton uses. There are also Hey Every and Keygen, and also Dial Tone, but they're a whole different thing, I don't want to get into them, maybe some other time. Oh, and also, before I go on, Deal Gone Wrong is an instance of leitmotif A. It's just pitched down a lot. Indie RPGs love changing their music's pitch, don't they? The next stop on the leitmotif station is the one, the only, number 39 in Deltarune's soundtrack list, colloquially known as Spamton_Neo_Mix_X_Whip.org. The scoopiest track in the track list, The Big Shot. Note that from this point, whenever there's a melody that might be difficult to hear due to the sheer richness of the track, I might boost its volume or isolate it. To do that, I'm using an FLP by Nini, which is amazingly accurate, so huge thanks to them. This video wouldn't be possible without their work. Anyway, theme A appears like 3 times in Big Shot. The first instance is found near the start, and here it goes. As you can hear/see, the melody itself is practically unchanged, though it's recontextualized. In the original Spamton track, it was played with an earthbound synth, while here the instrument of choice is multiple instruments, actually. It's a combination of these ones. This is a recurring thing within the more complex Toby Fox tracks that you'll see if you stare at FLP files as much as I do. A mix of multiple instruments playing the same thing. This allows for a more nuanced sound, considering you can fine-tune each instrument separately. Like here, the reverb violins are not used in the first half of the part, which gives it a sense of progression once they join. The next variation on the list, sorted by structural difference and not time of appearance, is this. This one starts off sounding like the original, but it quickly trails off to who knows where. By the second iteration, it mostly becomes background music for the lyrics, which is kind of a shame in my opinion. I really like this melody, and this glissando-y bit sounds especially cool to me. I'm just gonna remove the lyrics for now, so it's easier to hear what I'm about to discuss next. Turns out, on that second iteration, in addition to the main melody, another one starts playing alongside it. It's pretty difficult to hear, so I'm gonna make it a bit louder. This bottom row corresponds to it, if you want to follow along with your eyes. To be honest, in any other context, the two almost independently playing melodies would have irritated me by completely clashing against each other. But with an enemy like Spamton Neo, these kinds of weird-sounding conflicts are welcomed. This layering also reminds me of actual computer programs I've had to work with that create a million windows and make you deal with them somehow. What a nightmare. Let's say that this is a version of A and call it A'. Finally, the third variation. This theme takes two notes from the main A theme and expands upon them as a mini-theme. I think. I don't really know what else to categorize this part as, so let's just say it's another variation of A and call it A', okay? There's a nice contrast between the two pairs of measures that's made clear by the sheet music that I have. The melody goes back and forth between being relatively calm and simple and hammering on the octaves. This contrast of dynamics is used 2 more times in the track, but we'll discuss that later. So those are all the variations of Leitmotif A present in Big Shot. Let's map them out on a sound file of the track to better understand its overall structure. So, what about Leitmotif B? Well, I'd say it's more prominent but not as diverse. Despite my naming shenanigans, Theme B may be more important than Theme A. The original variant of it is repeated 3 times, each time with minor changes. The first one marks the beginning of the track. Then a bit later, more assertively this time. And once more. This leitmotif has only one variation, which goes as follows. What? What was that?